Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Amber Gunst. I'm the CEO of Austin Technology Council, and we're thrilled to welcome you all to our open forum this afternoon, and even more happy to have vXchnge lead this conversation about co-location today. Before we get started, I want to remind everybody that you can put your questions in the Q&A down below, or in the chat box down below, and that we will get to questions on the latter half of this. So if you've got questions, don't hesitate to put them in so that we can make sure that we can get the answers for you. I'm now going to pass this over to John Santo with vXchnge and his team, and they're going to walk us through the importance of co-location. John?
Hi, thanks, Amber, and thank you all for joining. Again, my name is John Santo. I'm with vXchnge. I am a client business executive, so I work particularly here in the Austin market with organizations looking to adopt co-location data center, either from a production environment, disaster recovery, or even being a part of their production edge. With that said, I'd like to turn it over to the rest of the team and the panelists here to introduce themselves. Ernie?
Yes, hello. Thank you, everybody. My name is Ernie Sampera, and I'm the CMO and one of the co-founders of the vXchnge company.
How you doing? My name is Cliff Heidel. I'm one of the solution architects here for vXchnge. I help out with planning and space and power for our co-location centers.
Hey everyone, I'm Pat Kelly. I am a client business executive along with John Santo and Anthony, who you'll hear from in a second, here at our Austin data center. Excited to be here and excited to take part in this event.
Hi, I'm Anthony Chibanian. I'm also a business executive with vXchnge going on a year now. So it's been a great ride.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys. So let's jump right in. Essentially, over the last year with the COVID-19 pandemic, we here at vXchnge noticed really a paradigm shift in what a lot of our current customers and actually a lot of what some Austin companies were reaching out to us to help them with. And essentially, that's what we're here to talk about today. What we noticed is a lot of organizations that have made the shift from their on-prem workplace to a fully remote workforce is that what's sort of the next steps? What do we do next? What does going back to the office look like? And quite frankly, is that something that they should entertain? With that, what we've really started to see is the pandemic created a paradigm shift, focused and centralized workspace in an office environment to a dispersed and remote contingency. Industries that have already had a dispersed or remote work environment made the full shift easier than those that didn't, but it also made them consider the possibility for the option to move to a remote workforce permanently. Created in this wake was this new vision and need to have the ability for their office workers to function in a home capacity. What we're going to go through today is a lot of the benefits to adopting a work from home environment permanently and how to maximize those benefits with partnering with a co-location firm such as ourselves, vXchnge. So the first benefit that we're going to go through is the cost. As you can imagine, there have been a lot of organizations that have been tracking all of the averages and statistics through 2020. As organizations moved to a work from home model, they saw on average, companies would save $11,000 per employee per year. Now this makes sense because they're actually able to get out of that expensive office space that they're paying the rent on. But also when you think about it, they're also getting out of the connectivity, the phones, all of the office supplies that all kind of roll into that. From an employee side, the employees are reporting actually saving over $5,000 a year from working from home. Again, we're thinking about moving less cars off the street, not paying for gas, not spending so much in takeout and restaurants on their lunch break. Moving from the cost, we actually saw an increase in productivity. Now, a lot of organizations before COVID were hesitant to move to a full work from home model because they were, I guess, a little hesitant from a productivity model. But what we actually saw when most organizations were forced into this model is that 85% confirmed that the productivity increased. Of the actual people side, 77% said that they were being more productive due to fewer distractions. Now, I used to work in the office pre-COVID, and I can tell you that I can actually attest to this. You sit there and you go to the water cooler and you start having a conversation about the game that was on last night or the latest episode, and then you run into another coworker on your way back to the desk, and these conversations can go one way or another and end up chewing into what was supposed to just be a 5-minute break into 15, 30 minutes or to a full hour even. So being focused at home, being away from all of the office distractions has really actually increased productivity for a lot of organizations. On the HR side, we actually started to look into employee morale. 60% of employees have felt their mental health improved, where 80% of remote workers have experienced less job stress. Another thing to note is workplace violence in the last decade has actually tripled. With everybody working from home, this is a great place for people to feel safe in their own environment and actually be productive. The last thing I wanted to cover as far as the benefits is talent acquisition. I know that a lot of leaders and organizations have all went through the pain of finding the exact right candidate, but they're just not in the right area to be able to make it into the office. Not having to be so constricted to one particular area means you can hire the right person for the right position and have them work from wherever in the country. On top of that, 80% of US workers now say that they would turn down a job that didn't offer the flexible working, either 1, 2, maybe 3 days a week working from home or full remote workforce. With that, 42% of people who work remotely have actually been doing so for more than 5 years. So there's already a large percentage of the US workforce that have experience working from home and have been doing so successfully for a long time, and actually would rather keep that model than go back into an office. Of that 42%, now that a lot of people have actually experienced this, I would imagine that number to rise where people are actually looking to stay from a work from home model. Now, there are many other benefits that we could get into, such as going green and reducing the carbon footprint, and really kind of going into having people happier to come into their workplace. But for here, I wanted to focus on these, and we can definitely jump into any questions you might have on these benefits later on. But the biggest thing to identify and actually start reaping the benefits from this from an organization side is aligning on the cost. If we have everybody working from home, the question is, how do we get out of that office that's hosting all of your IT infrastructure? Well, this is where you can partner with co-location and actually move your IT assets into a secure, safe building and start to reap and maximize on those benefits. So we've kind of put together these 8 ways in which co-location can help. From an infrastructure management side, we're going to have very efficient power and redundant power, as well as cooling and controlling cost over time. We also are going to have 24/7 on-site staff, security, redundancy, scalability, and you can refocus your efforts on business rather than data center management. Another thing that co-location can bring to the table is direct on-ramp cloud access. A lot of organizations are going through a digital transformation that includes a cloud presence. Now, a lot of that cloud cost is going to be tied up in egress. We in the co-location space have already direct on-ramps to these infrastructure cloud services such as AWS or Azure to help reduce that egress cost. Third, we have uptime reliability. Data availability is crucial for a modern workforce. I think all of us here in Austin can attest to the uptime reliability over the last couple of weeks where we had the rolling blackouts. A lot of co-locations, including ourselves, are fortunate enough to be considered an essential business where we are not actually a part of the rolling blackouts, such as hospitals or water treatment facilities. So our power stays up, and we actually don't even have to rely on the generators that we have in place for runtime when power could possibly go out. A virtual workforce is geographically distributed, so losing access to the network means productivity grinds to a halt. Even augmenting with public cloud doesn't give a reliable uptime with an SLA of 99.99. Co-location with data centers have a lot of reliability records and 100% uptime SLAs that ensure the remote employees will always be able to access their servers and hosting and data wherever they are. Now, as you can imagine, with co-location, we are going to focus heavily on security. We have to earn that trust of our clients to put their entire IT data architecture within our facility. So look to partner with those that go above and beyond compliance standards when it comes to your data and allow you to control access to employees as well as vendors remotely. I think this is kind of the key part, control access remotely. There's a lot of times you're going to have outside vendors that need access to your environment, and being able to give them access on a moment's notice, even just from the touch of your phone, is going to be pretty vital. Business continuity. So this is getting back to what we just went through over the past couple of weeks, or I guess a couple of weeks ago here in Austin. How do you prepare for the unknown? The acts of God. Austin is actually one of the most secure places geographically when it comes to natural disasters. See, we're too far south for the tornadoes that you'd see in Dallas, and we're too far inland from the hurricanes that you'd see in Houston. Yet, we still had a snowstorm that knocked a lot of people out, including actually a lot of our customers that we provide disaster recovery services for. And in speaking with them, it was amazing to have a partner like us where we didn't have to worry about those power outages and we could be there to protect them in this time of need. On top of that, a lot of the business continuity isn't just, supplying the reliable connectivity, power, but also the services. If I was looking for a co-location partner, I would also look for someone that would have some offerings around a DR as a service type of offering where you can actually bundle an entire solution together instead of just looking for a piece of that solution. The next I want to talk about is compliant infrastructure. Think of co-location as compliance as a service. Even if you don't require certain compliance, your co-location partner should adhere to these practices, whether that be ISO 27001, HIPAA, PCI, SOX, you name it. There also should be make going through any audits, I guess, easier by providing access to the logs and compliance at the available, the touch of a button. Being able to download those compliance reports instead of having to call in and wait a week or 2 weeks is vital when you're going through the security log or the security audits, because honestly, it's not it's not always fun to go through those unnecessary audits. Next up deals with the connectivity. Now, there's a lot of different cybersecurity threats that are out there. I myself came from ForcePoint, located right here in Austin, and I can actually speak to a lot of them. The one thing that we didn't cover was DDoS mitigation. How do you control protections around the attacks that are going to come in over the internet where they're actually just looking to kind of take you out? More than 4 million DDoS attacks were launched in the first half of 2020 and remains one of the most common attacks due to their ease to carry out. Redundancy just doesn't apply to power and data, it also applies to connectivity. Cyber attacks are the #2 cause of data breaches today. While your team focuses on mitigating a DDoS attack, how much was stolen? There's a lot of things to consider this and some things you should look for in a co-location partner. The last part where I want to kind of focus on is the zero trust network access. The remote workplace poses several security challenges when it comes to a network access. Employees are working from home and often connecting to data and applications through vulnerable Wi-Fi connections with unpatched devices, and the lack of security controls found in most offices. An employee's laptop could pick up all manner of malicious software just from a typical internet activity, and one of which could be providing a hacker with the access to passwords or other credentials, basically the keys to the kingdom. I would look to partner with co-location data centers that can help organizations route traffic through zero trust security platforms and prevent remote users from actually connecting directly to co-located assets. Even if a remote employee's access credentials are compromised, zero trust network access ensures they won't be able to simply jump laterally to other parts of the network. With that said, I'd like to introduce again the team and round of panelists where we can go through and start answering some of these questions. Again, my name is Jonathan Santo. We've got Patrick Telly and Anthony Chabanian on the client business side. We've got Cliff Heidel, one of our solutions architect on the technical side, as well as our Chief Marketing Officer, Ernest Sampera.
Good. Well, thank you, John. And for everybody, if you have questions, go ahead and drop that into the chat. And John, so that we can see everybody's faces, do you want to unshare your screen? Because that usually gets people to go ahead and ask questions along there. Wonderful. And we've got a nice big group today, so don't be shy. But I've got a quick question here to get this started is with the rising demand of work from home in the past year, how quickly did co-location services expand? And more importantly, were there any bumps along the way with the number of companies that were looking to do this?
If it's okay, I can take that. That's a great question. Let me start with, I think there's something pretty interesting. Our job, our sole mission is to protect customers' brands. So if you think about the context of that, everything we do is to keep the data center up and running. John did a great job, very eloquent, better than I could in terms of the 8 parameters around it. But let's just go back to what's happened here in Austin. In Austin, as much as we hear a lot of people talk to us about COVID-19 and the essential business, the closing of the essential businesses, and people were not allowed to travel and everything else, I look at what's happened in Austin. Austin was just I'm going to call it an act of nature, the snow, not to be expected in Austin. But at the end of the day, what we did is we were under what we call business continuity umbrella. And in the business continuity umbrella, we actually equipped our sites with cots, food, water, everything. Because essentially our business is driving and supporting businesses, but it's all done through people and process. So let me start with tactically what happened. Last year with COVID, similar mechanics. The only difference there is we were operating as business continuity. Again, disaster that may have occurred. Pandemic is not something that you plan. So what we had to do today quickly is actually pull together what we call a pandemic response team. That is then a piece of it that tied to CDC. And as we all, I'm going to call it, experienced it state by state, and we're across 10 different states just to make things even more difficult, is that there was a lot of what I would call federal mandates, local mandates, and even municipality and city mandates. And this is all of it we had to maintain. All of it we had to work with the most essential, which is people. The machines can keep working, the generators can keep open, but what we had to do is actually put down all sorts of what I call safeguard protocols to keep our employees and our customers, because essentially you do that, then you maintain the integrity of the site. People pay for us to maintain it. So you think of all those moving pieces, what are the bumps? The bumps were like everybody else, unknowns. In California, it became, in Santa Clara is where our data center is it was one of the most stringent. I think it was a purple zone is what they called it. We actually had issue special non-essential travel permits that were actually given to us by the local police force. So that's how we got the site managers and the site folks to come in there. Then what we had to do, and again, interestingly enough, as people started to, I'm going to call it, everybody went remote, including IT and everything else. It's not like the applications could go remote either. It's not like the application support could go either. But when they were hosted in our facilities, we now had to maintain 3 separate shifts. And again, separate people. People is the biggest challenge. And so what we had to do is we had to put what we call pandemic protocols, that if one person was, I'm going to call it contaminated with COVID at the time is what was the wordage, then what we had to do is try to isolate the entire group. We had to then do social distancing. We had to then maintain, a couple of mechanical things we had to do is we took away hand and bio, and we went to key card so that we assigned customers their own key card. Why? Because it was just less of a touch point. And again, it's a human. These are all things that we had to adjust. They're bumps, but when you think about it, we had to still maintain zero trust. And what that means is that Amber, if you were never allowed to be here, even if you showed up, we wouldn't let you in. It would be breaking what I would call governance and certification protocols. No one said you got broken into and they stole your laptop and that's okay because it was COVID. No, it was still a failure. It's still a compliance risk. You still, kind of went through all that. So the enforcement of the protocols is really, what we did see from our perspective is we might have been a little bit smart. And when we started the company, we believed in transparency. And so we put this platform called Insight that actually allows you to see everything that's going on within your infrastructure. No one ever expected a pandemic to come that would have impacted all of that. But what we saw is a lot of rising level of tickets where customers were asking us to be their eyes and hands at the facility, because in a lot of cases, they weren't considered essential workers, despite the fact that they're basically doing what we're doing, which is maintaining infrastructure and equipment. And some of the bigger digital companies actually can and could have been categorized as that. So we were their eyes and hands, and that gave them the transparency. So we saw the benefit of an increase in remote hands, which is really good. Let me go back to the people. We still had to maintain every shift in isolation so that if one person was tested positive and they were close to or what I would call in the surrounding area, then we'd have to isolate all 5 of the workers for that day. Well, then now we had down to 2 shifts, and customers are still expecting us at 24/7/365. So we put protocols in distancing. Today, it's not even a protocol anymore. It's part of our entry. When you walk in, you have to wear a face mask, and we do temperature scans. We think that that's the lowest common denominator. We'll see how this whole thing evolves. I think Texas, you guys just had the mandate for face masks to be removed. The way we look at it, we're not too sure we're going to remove that yet, because again, it's the integrity of the employees, the customers, and then the data center. So that's kind of long-winded, but it's just all mechanics that coincidentally worked well with the snowstorm that you guys had, because that was still business continuity for us.
And that's great. And thanks for reiterating that you guys are following safe protocols, because that's something that we're being very specific about. So we do have a question from Bill. He's asking, what type of companies are your go-to-market or channel or other partners?
I can jump in real quick, and then one of the folks that are, so we look at our go-to-market. We have, I'm going to call it 2 big categories: direct sellers, which is what I would call our sales folks, and you're seeing some of the best and brightest here today. And then we have on the other side, we have in Insights, a channel. So we do have channel partners, and those come in different flavors. And then even within the direct sellers is what I would want to call it. We have both field sales, meaning folks that live and breathe with their customers, and telesales. So that's how we cover that. And that goes by type of size of company and geography. The channel is very local, very national. And what we do is we have referral partners, we have agents, and agents really represent our brand, work with the sellers. And more importantly, it's a VX customer that comes into play. And then we also have some resellers. And then we have a couple of what I would call substantial partners like the AT&T and the Lumens, which actually resell our services. So they essentially are selling vXchnge co-location. So it's great to be trusted by the AT&Ts and the Lumens of the world relative to, I'm going to call it some of John's comments in terms of the reliability. That's our go-to-market. Sounds simple. The complexity is the mechanics, but it's, you know, I don't, if anybody wants to add.
Yeah, well, if you don't mind, I'll jump in on that one too.
Yeah.
A lot of the companies, a lot of people see data centers sometimes as these enormous buildings that have all this, power and redundancy, but we're very happy dealing in the, you might say, that sweet spot between the single cabinet to 15 cabinet range as well. We don't need to have a 300 cabinet deal just to entertain clients. We're happy to talk to you with whatever needs you may have down the road. Whether you're starting off with just a single cabinet and growing to 20, we love those types of use cases and customers that want to grow with us. So again, we don't have to have a huge number just to open up conversations. We're happy with, what you want to bring to the table and at a pace that is right for your business. And that also comes into this type of a pandemic response. Clients were looking at, hey, I've got a big empty office. I'm coming due for my lease. How do I move the stuff out of my IT cabinet? And can I keep it remote and maybe go to a data center? And that's where I jump in. Let's talk about what you have on your infrastructure. Let's talk about your security needs. Let's talk about your connectivity, and we'll work out a plan to get you migrated or at least moved over in that time frame to help you best save money, save your business, keep moving forward.
That's great, Cliff. And it's good to know that you work with companies of all sizes, because I think sometimes people get a little, trepidatious about if, calling and then finding out that you can't do it. And that's always a disappointment as well.
Yeah, and I just had a new customer come on board where, they wanted to go remote. They'd been hesitant for this for so long, but just with seeing how the market changed, what John covered earlier, in terms of remaining competitive, things like that, they decided to go remote, and they chose our data center because of our levels of security, just the meticulous nature of our staff. And, in the end, we just had that snowstorm, and they stayed out online. Their production environment in our data center. This is a small company, about 60 people. They had their production gear in our data center, and that stayed online the entire time despite the power outage.
That's fantastic. So we've got another question here from Greg. He's asking, if we move our servers into your data center, how would Zero Trust work? And do you have an umbrella firewall in front of our firewalls?
Okay. So Zero Trust in that capacity means simply that, when you're putting your equipment in the data center, you are in control of your environment. So you allow your access. We do not trust anyone to just say, hey, we're going to let them come in. You have multiple levels, 5 levels of security. We have man trap capabilities, and then everything is a touch point to, you might say, to get to your equipment, right down to even cage environments, fully videoed surveillance, and even biometrics that we can even offer. When it comes to the firewall capabilities, we provide connectivity. If you're providing the firewall, that's, again, it's your network, it's your security that you're going to be implementing. We don't have a managed firewall that we're utilizing. We do have carriers that provide that DDoS attack security, you might say mitigation. And what that provides is it's stopped at the outer edges of the network rather than at your firewall gateway. Because if all that traffic's hitting your firewall gateway, it's already too late. You've already been taken offline. With the carriers that we utilize, that DDoS attack, it allows you to keep your systems up and running, your connectivity running, and you can then either fail over, you'll have traffic between either, let's say, an AT&T or a CenturyLink or a level 3 or whoever it is that we're using for that mitigation in that area. So again, you're managing your firewalls, you're managing your security.
One thing I'd love to jump in on here, you just brought up, Cliff, regarding the kind of layers of security in terms of Zero Trust. Ernie brought up Insight, our business intelligence platform that does far more than allowing you to monitor power, monitor bandwidth usage so that you avoid overages. But it also allows master admins and other users to be able to remove access or add access for certain individuals who need access to the data center. So, let's say, God forbid, you're the master administrator of your environment through our Insight platform. Somebody leaves your company in order to maintain that Zero Trust umbrella, you will be able to, right from your smartphone or your computer, quickly remove their access so that you're not left open to liability.
And also our NOC, or basically our SCC is on site. So if there's key access to your cabinets that are there, the keys are stored on site with our team. So they're never lost, they're never checked out, they never leave the building, they can't be copied. Again, zero trust. We're there to help and service and protect your environments.
Yeah, safety is definitely key, especially right now with everybody working from home and needing to make sure that systems keep up and running. So question here, like for companies that are making this transition, what are the first steps and how smooth is it in making this big shift?
I can jump in on that. It all comes down to how their infrastructure is set up currently. When you look at any environment as a whole, server, storage, networking are the primary attributes of an infrastructure. The applications, the third-party connectivity, your integrations. We will sit down, myself, with the clients, discuss what they have, where they have it, and how best to position the equipment, the services, in a data center or multiple data centers to allow for the best employee connectivity and user experience for their environments. In which case, like I said, building that project plan and that step-by-step migration plan is a key attribute of, the success. We're going to ask tough questions. We're going to ask, what you're using, how much you're using, as far as power is concerned, what your connectivity looks like, what your strategy is moving forward. So we're not just planning for today and for this particular moment, but what was your strategy, for going forward a year, 2 year, 3 years from now, and how do we best position you for that success?
Cliff, I think to piggyback off that, a lot of it to kind of really does come down to the planning.
Yep.
On the client business executive side, I usually hear all the time, we're looking for 5 kW per cabinet, and that's okay to go off of here in the beginning, but where I see the true value of what we're offering is the expertise that Cliff actually offers when we start digging down into it. Okay, what are the assets that are going in the cabinets? And is 5 kW actually really what you need, right? Is that gig worth of service really what you need? There's a lot of times where that might be overkill, or that might be something you want to grow into. But a lot of times, that's kind of what's thrown out there. It's just, I need 5 kilowatts of power per cabinet, 5 cabinets. What are we looking at? Well, initially that's fine, but let's get you on to Cliff to make sure we have that smooth transition from your on-prem data center into our co-location data center.
Yeah. We try to work.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have classic phrases. They all know me, but it's you measure twice, cut once. It's
Yep.
really the way to look at this. What we have found is where we have been more open with our customer, with, in this case, a prospect that's coming in, we have seen total cost of ownership drop. What does that mean? Well, we'll question that if you do 5 kW and you have 3 5 kW cabs, why wouldn't you just do 1 8 kW cab? Okay, I'm just throwing more of what people are saying is the wrong thing, but that's the design work that Cliff and the team, and actually even the account managers, are going through. Because again, the point being is, someone may say you may pay more for the cab, but in total cost, you'll pay less because you're using less switching gear, less infrastructure, less failure points. So one of the things that we like to do, again, if you think about it from a data center perspective, is maximize the amount of power use. And so that is really contrarian to what most people go through. Most people go through and say, this is what I'm capped at in terms of my deployment, whether they be in the infrastructure they're in today, or even in the building or maintenance, that's what they're doing in terms of the surge. So that's one of the things that we do. And then Insight, the beauty of it is that we can give you power utilization, so you can set thresholds of how high up or low you want to go. Because again, 80th, that's the most we can do. Some folks run it at a conservative 45, 50% of use. Why? Because when they surge and they have to repower on, they can take it to the 80th percentile or 70, whatever that may be. And so these are all elements that have to be again, to use the same phrase, I love it. You measure twice. So the more information we get, the better we can do a better job in getting and coming down to with the solution. That's really what it is. It's colo is not a commodity anymore. I think there's a perception of it, but we're starting to see a lot of differentiators here. And that's one of the things we pride ourselves as the team and how we approach that consultative approach. Throw more buzzwords onto it.
Well, everything is an ICB. We saw an individual case basis or a non-standard. People used to call them NSRs, non-standard requests. Perfect example. Client we just had come in had 7 racks of equipment, and they had a lower power rating for each one of the equipments. I said, well, something. Our data center has 5 kW capabilities, 10 kW capabilities. Some data centers have 20 kW density capabilities. Instead of putting it in 7 racks and spreading it all out, let's condense it to 3. Let's get you the right power. Data centers have performance cooling. Let's show you how we can decrease that footprint, consolidate you, and save you a little bit on that. And it worked out really, really well. They were very impressed with how it all came together. Saves on cabling, extra cabinets, extra PDUs, whole 9 yards. So yeah.
That's fantastic. And it sounds like you all work on a very consultative basis with your clients as well throughout your entire team. Because I know just for us, and we've got a very small team, but when we did an office move, it was looking at everything and how are we doing this the right way? And is this something that we need? And for us, it was more like, do we need all these chairs? Do we need all these desks? And, but looking at your data and looking at your power and what you're doing, that's pretty critical. And without it, your company's not going to be okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, we've got another question here. So it goes again to the data and cybersecurity side, but not so much what Greg was leaning towards, but instead with everybody doing work from home and with people and just clicking on stuff, and maybe their kids are hopping on to do a class and everything else, and everybody's plugged in and everybody's got computers and data and everything going on in their homes all day long. What kind of data and cybersecurity issues pop up with your clients, and how do you all help them kind of identify those? I think is most important, and to, help advise them on how to combat some of this stuff.
So perfect example is if somebody comes in and says, hey, look, everybody was in an office. It was behind our firewall. We had everything secured. We would sit down and actually discuss that with them. How do you establish, you might say, using a wide area network, using your at-home internet to provide connectivity? So we're going to recommend a VPN. We're going to ask, how would they like to protect their environments? And if we won't be able to do it ourselves, we'll bring in our partners. We'll bring in a security consultant. We'll ask them, what is it you're looking for? And we'll bring in one of our partners to have that discussion with them to say, look, do you need a firewall VPN concentrator? Do you need added security? Do you need monitoring? And we'll make some recommendations. We'll put that, you might say that consulting step forward to make sure that at least that information is put out there. And I did ISP networking for close to 14 years. I ran a 48 statewide SLEC with a group of people for many, many years. And we did everything from MPLS to IPsec tunnels, and the multiple cores. I think we had at one point almost 300,000 endpoints. When it comes to security of that nature, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with somebody. We'll take an hour, do a tech talk with them, and just at least give them some food for thought.
That's great, Cliff. And can you kind of, because you're talking about companies that you say, hey, we're going to pull in our security experts that we work with, and we're going to pull in these people that do that. How big of a process is it for you all to confirm that this is a company that you do want to recommend and that you do want to partner with and work with your clients on? Because that seems like that's also a risk.
That is, and I'll tell you, we're very selectful in the companies that we do partner with. Traditionally, when we do have these conversations with them, we make sure that they have a proven track record of success. We look at their products and services that they're deploying at this time. And again, we're recommending it, but clients can bring their own consultants. They can bring their own security companies. We're more than happy to work with whoever they want to provide as well. It's like I said, we don't want to force anything on you. We're space, we're power, we're cooling, we're connectivity, we're remote hands. We're able to do that heavy lifting from an infrastructure standpoint. But again, we're willing to, again, work with clients and their needs to make sure we deliver, on that.
Yeah, the key word here is connectivity, I think, is what we're hearing. And what this whole remote work from home has done is really people have had to knee jerk because everybody was sent home. So therefore, then they have figured out, okay, we're on a Zoom call now. I mean, it's amazing when Zoom started and where they are today, just in terms of, I would call a network evolution. You would think about it because no one ever engineered it to be this big. Well, customers are going through the same thing. And the thing that one of the things Cliff highlighted is we're carrier agnostic. We're neutral. So we have a lot of carrier. We have a dozen carrier service providers. They don't like to be called carriers anymore. Service providers. And the reason being is that if you deal with a specific service provider, they will go all the way down or up and down the food chain relative to their own cyber. And they'll also add their own value add services, which is what we think they do best. So we're not going to get in there and actually have that. Some of these service providers are also, so not only are they populated within our site in terms of what we call our Meet Me room or our connectivity, so it's just a physical cross connect. So there's no last mile, no other access. There's a company that Pat and I were talking to that's Austin based, where they use a DDoS service offer that we offer, which is called vXDefend for their public website. And then they run an MPLS or they run and a VPN with another carrier. So essentially what they've done is they've segmented what they need from a performance. And it all starts with, what do you need? And then we give you the choice. And the good news is that it's all physical connection. There's no re-engineering all the way around to get it done. So that's the beauty of what most multi-tenant colo should provide you in terms of if they're neutral. You have choice, you decide what you need relative to the application, the bandwidth, and whatever help. And again, with this whole remote from work, people have had to, we've seen our DDoS offer grow 57% in growth in network utilization year over year. Now, we're using, I'm not as technical as these guys, two big honking networks. We're using Lumens, which is CenturyLink level 3, and we're using AT&T. You can't get any bigger than that. That's the good news. And we give it to you as a blended service, and you can go all the way down to, or up to, whatever you would need in terms of that blended circuit. So that's choice. That gives you that. We have Cogent, we got, Windstream. There's a lot of opportunities, a lot of different things. There's on-net providers where if you want to keep things in terms of remote branch to Austin, we can do that as well. That's the partners we bring in, and they're pretty well-known brands, so it's not like we're questioning whether AT&T can do something or not. How they do it is a different discussion, but that's kind of the mechanics of what we have, which is why we have a lot of good trusted brands that actually live in our data center, especially inclusive of Austin. So it's a testament to what we do every day.
That's fantastic. So there was a lot of talk in the presentation about people doing full remote work moving forward. But as I talk to members, they talk about, well, we might bring some people back into the office, or we might go with a smaller footprint on an office because we'll have some people working from home a few days a week, and they don't need quite the square footage that they'd had before. So is co-location an option for these companies to kind of take the server room out of the equation and make it a little bit more flexible for them to go from one place to another?
Absolutely. You heard that from everybody.
That's a good question all day. Everybody agreed.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I'd like to stress, of course, the answer is absolutely, as you've heard from everyone. But in addition to not only serving from a technological and co-location perspective for the IT environment, one thing that might have been mentioned briefly by Cliff is, we host Meet Me rooms, as well as kind of the full on-site suite of availability for you to conduct your business, especially in Austin. For a company that might be looking to scale up but reduce their spend on their office space, we have office space available that can be packaged in with our services. So it can be committed to any one company specifically. And could anyone help me? How much square footage about do we have available in office space? I know it's a lot.
Kind of what you want to build out. There's quite a bit back there. But I think the key takeaway is that it's all customizable. We've got a lot of office space. They're not, we have some that's already designed now, 100, 200, 300. But there's a large space that's really just built out that we're kind of leaving there in case somebody does want a 500, 1,000 or something like that. Again, on an individual case basis, really what you guys are looking for, we'd be looking to facilitate.
Yeah, let me be very clear though. Office space sometimes implies long-term lease yields. That's not what we do. That's not our core. What we do have though, and I thought it's an excellent point. We do have conference rooms, we have cafeterias, we have showers, we have bathrooms. So we have what I would call, again, it's all run with people. It's kind of interesting as to how you have to have these amenities when you have people. But the point being is that we also have to have that comfort for that. We do have office space. We do have some DR desks that we implement, but the number one priority for us as a company, just to kind of come out, is this co-location. And so if tomorrow we grew and outgrew, that's the first space we would take. Having said that though, what we do and we engineer into our data centers is we engineer workspace, we engineer storage, we engineer all the things that are what I would call ancillary environments that are required for you to support your deployment, your infrastructure. If gear comes in, we store it, we secure it. There's terms on how we do that. There's protocols on how we do that. Then there is also office space or shared office space. There's assembly space. So we have a lot of the space that will never, ever go away. But office space, I just want to make sure people understand that we're not a classic real estate company. So it's not a 5-10 year lease on that. I have to, kind of make sure that we put that in there. And the only reason I say that is because this whole pandemic is forcing people to reconsider real estate models. And I don't want to leave you guys with the thought that we have a piece of that real estate business. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. And it's good that you made that clear.
Yeah, to add on to what Ernie was saying, some of the discussions that I've had with other also people asking that same question is, you can, if you offload your IT infrastructure, at least the core infrastructure to the co-location and data center, you can then get you might say an office that has your executive, maybe boardrooms, a couple of different suites. You can do like hotels in a smaller space, still keeping, let's say, 60% of your workforce remote. They can come in for staff meetings in this space. If you ever want to do a full team meeting, I mean, hotel ballrooms, people were talking about where you could rent those for an afternoon and get everybody together and set them up on a stage there and just to have that office meet. But we had our all hands call over Zoom, over Microsoft Teams. Everybody was able to chime in, ask questions, just as we're doing here today. They adopt that type of technology and that type of go forward strategy as far as keeping everybody in touch. And it works just as well as driving 15 miles, 20 miles, 50 miles into an office. We're having a conversation. We're geographically dispersed right now.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. For me as an extrovert, I just want to be in front of people again, like in person in front of people. So we've got a question from Chris. How would you help me if I use AWS, but also have my own servers? And that's really kind of also the last question that I had for you all, which is with companies and they're starting to go into cloud and servers and everything else, like what's a good option and how does the mixture of the two work together to create success for these companies?
We get that question a lot. That's what we refer to as a hybrid model. Cloud basically it starts off with a data center, AWS, your Azure, your Googles, your Oracles. They all start off with a very robust data center. And then they put in equipment and services and applications that you then lease. But some of your core competencies, your core infrastructure, like, your databases, your human capital management, supply chain management, some of those systems that have dedicated cores need to stay, you might say, on premise. And that's where we would have our companies like Megaport and our cloud on-ramp providers that basically would allow you to keep your core infrastructure in the data center. You can manage it with your own servers, your own storage, and really have that performance-based experience for your users. And then for the things that are really dynamic that you need to be able to scale up and scale down, We can provide you cloud on-ramps that will get you to AWS, to Azure, or Google, or whoever, Oracle, to use those systems and have that type of scalability for cloud. And then as you realize, hey, this is how many cores it takes, this is how much memory it takes, this is how much storage it takes, you can then bring that back to your physical data center and reap the rewards of that cost effectiveness of running it yourself. And you can use cloud for the geographic dynamic that you need.
See, I actually, one of my current clients is actually a close partner with a big cloud provider, and they're actually implementing an AWS Outpost cabinet as we speak. Basically, an Outpost is giving you everything that AWS provides right here in either your data center or a co-location like our data center. And it really does cut down on any of the egress costs that you're going to see with data moving in and out of that cloud infrastructure, all while being able to manage everything right here on-prem. You still get all of the services, the updates, the AWS tools, everything that's provided right there, right here in the colo data center. And they're opting to go this route simply because the amount of data that would have to be exchanged between our co-location data center here in Austin and AWS is still not the best cost effective as they've grown to that size. So I think it's as companies, especially here in Austin, are kind of starting out on this SMB side and growing their organization to start in the cloud, as they continue to ramp and grow, I think finding the right co-location partnership to scale is very crucial.
John,
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'd like to comment on about a client I just began working with recently, and they're a startup, as you were alluding to, although they're kind of starting to leave the startup stage. And for a long time, being deployed in a large cloud provider's environment made sense to them. But a direct quote from their SVP of IT product was that, hang on here, let me make sure I have it correct. He said, our cloud provider solution is not as turnkey as we thought it would be, nor is it as cost effective as it once was. So again, scaling up to where they need to be as they are experiencing higher egress fees as their data size has grown. That's something that kind of just goes back to what we've been saying, is we want to meet our customers where they are.
Plus a monthly SLA for most cloud providers is standard. Our SLA is yearly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ernie, we're 7 nines.
Well, we maintain 7 nines of uptime. So that's an audit report. Our SLA is 100%.
Yeah.
So you can, that's it. I hate to say it, but if we ran at 4 nines, I think we'd be out of business.
And with that in play, when we look at it from just like I said, a co-location perspective, we've had clients that have looked at what it costs to manage servers, again, with clean power, redundant power in a very cooled, controlled environment. Equipment lasts longer. You're going to get, instead of 3 to 5 years, you're going to get 5 to 7 years. We're seeing hardware now with SSDs. I think back when I was an HP hyperconverged infrastructure engineer, they actually upped the warranty on their SSDs to 7 years because they were just lasting longer. You don't have the type of failures that they were seeing. So again, if the equipment's lasting longer and you're getting more bang for your buck out of your own infrastructure, it's kind of hard to, you might say, compete with that value to not have it on your own premise.
Fantastic. Well, good. Well, everybody, this was I learned a lot, and I saw Jessica in the chat, like announcing acronyms that she needs to go learn. So I'm sure she will be doing some of that tonight. But we appreciate the information that you shared and the knowledge that I think provided a lot of people with how to utilize co-location as they're looking at what the future of their business looks like. So thank you, Ernie and John and Pat and Cliff and Anthony for giving us information today. Our great member vXchnge, and we're very, very happy to have had you all with us today. And thank you for giving us a reason to bring everybody together. So you all take
Thank
care
you.
and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Jess. Bye.